In early 90s, police started finding bodies in Moscow region one after another. Victims don't have much in common: older women, adult males, and kids. Most of them sexually assaulted after being killed. And behind all of this, a giant man who once was a kind little boy who loved animals and was bullied for being different. In this video, I will tell you about the case of serial killer Sergei Ryakhovsky. Sergei was born 29th of December 1962 in city Balashikha, suburb of Moscow. Since early childhood, he had serious health issues, which caused him to often skip school. Sergei's family lived in a country house, and his parents were very caring and loved him very much. He didn't talk till the age of 3, and as it was later found out, it was caused by brain trauma. Fetus was too big, but doctors didn't do cesarean section when they should have. Unlike most serial killers, Ryakhovsky as a kid was very kind to animals. He cried when his parrot died and was really devastated when same happened to his kitten. But socializing was very hard for him. On one side, he had hard time communicating with others, but he also was sometimes aggressive and hot-tempered. Other kids often mocked him because he was very tall and had excessive weight, and his mother often was walking with him to school while holding hands, and others mocked him more because of it. After school, Sergei got college education as an electrician, but he worked in this field for just a year. After it, he was working on side jobs and mostly relied on his parents' support, while staying at home and constructing radio receivers as a hobby. Till he was 19, Sergei didn't have any romantic relationships. He had one girl he liked, but it ended after a few dates. The girl he dated was repulsed by his behavior. Ryakhovsky was rude and aggressive, and often was getting into unnecessary arguments. Maybe his failures had a negative impact on his psyche, or maybe it was just caused by his brain injury. But Sergei switched his attention to older women, and it got unhealthy really fast. In spring of 1982, he started stalking lone old women during nighttime. Then he attacked them in attempt to sexual assault. On his 11th attempt, his victim started screaming and bypassers came to rescue. Sergei was arrested and sentenced to prison, but for some reason he was punished only for hooliganism. When he got to prison, Sergei's cellmates found out what he actually did. People who commit sexual crimes in Russian prisons often become constant victims of abuse themselves. On his first day in prison, Ryakhovsky was sexually assaulted by his cellmates. Abuse and humiliation lasted for 4 years before Sergei was released. He became very hateful towards gay men for some reason and decided that he needed to purge all of them from the face of the earth, as he believed that they will reincarnate as quote-unquote normal. In June of 1988, while being in Moscow, he met a man who offered to pay him for intimacy. Sergei agreed, and they met on the next day in the village Bitsa in Moscow region. While walking in the wooded area, Ryakhovsky took out a screwdriver and stabbed the man multiple times. After the victim was dead, Sergei undressed him and arranged him in a way that, as he thought, will show his sexual orientation. He knew that his victim had a wife and a daughter and tried to hide his homosexuality. Despite the body being found very fast, police couldn't solve the case. In the meantime, Ryakhovsky started hunting old women again. In July of 1988, he stalked 70-year-old Klavdia Khokhlova near the forest in Moscow region. He approached her, stabbed her with a screwdriver 14 times, then took her war veteran certificate and 45 rubles and ran away. But surprisingly, his victim survived the attack. She was found by a neighbor who called the ambulance.
У нее голова, косынка на глазах, наверное, вся в крови, платье в крови. Вот. Я подошел, спросил ее, что случилось. Вот она сказала то, что на нее сзади напал мужчина.
Она не видела его?
Она не видела его.
Klavdia was taken to a hospital, and a few days after it, she died. And in September of 1988, Ryakhovsky killed his third victim. Again, an old woman was killed in a deserted area of Moscow region. Then, in January of 1989, a 16-year-old boy went to ski in the park, and while skiing, he accidentally hit a passerby with a ski pole. This passerby was Sergei Ryakhovsky, and he became furious because Kid didn't say sorry. After a long chase, he caught the boy, strangled him with a scarf, and assaulted his body with a ski pole. He didn't hide boy's body, only took the skis and threw them out in another location. Murdered teenager was found by his father, who went to search for him. This murder gave detectives first serious clue. They found Sergei's blurry fingerprint on one of the skis. They were able to make a conclusion that the killer is tall. Ryakhovsky's height was 195 centimeters, which is about 6 feet 4 inches. But at this point, all Ryakhovsky's murders weren't connected by detectives. The victims didn't have much in common. The next two attacks of Ryakhovsky were unsuccessful. First victim, an older woman, survived because thick clothing layers protected her from stab wounds. They turned out to be not that serious. And another victim survived by biting Ryakhovsky's finger. He loosened his grip and she was able to run away. Besides killing people, Ryakhovsky had another hobby. He was writing his own novel. He named it Starfall. There he was telling the story of Great Commander, who was traveling through space and eliminating different criminals and pirates using his flamethrower. He enjoyed describing executions that were done by Great Commander. Ryakhovsky had 3 versions of his novel, but none of them were finished. He also had a diary where he was writing down the distance between different towns in Moscow region and price of the train tickets. He also was drawing red or blue coffin for every person he killed. After unsuccessful attacks, Ryakhovsky committed another series of murders. He was killing women and cutting their heads off. After it, he again decided to return to killing gay men. In 1992, he started his hunt in Izmailovsky Park. It was a popular meeting place for gay men in Moscow. Ryakhovsky pretended to be a man who is searching for a partner there. And 7th of September, a 60-year-old man approached Ryakhovsky and offered him intimacy in a nearby bush. Soon Ryakhovsky murdered him by stabbing multiple times and then assaulted the body. 2 months later, Ryakhovsky murdered another man in the same park, and again assaulted the body after the murder. While investigating these 2 murders, police was able to get Sergei's DNA from victims' bodies. In January of 1993, passers-by found a body of a 73-year-old man. He had head, arm, and leg cut off. He was walking through forest collecting brushwood, and accidentally he stumbled upon Ryakhovsky. He got so scared by the looks of the giant man that he tried to scare him away using his axe. But Ryakhovsky was just too strong. He strangled his victim and then assaulted the body. Then he dismembered it by cutting off head and arm. And for some reason he returned the next day and decided to cut off his victim's leg. Then, in January of 1993, investigators finally were able to get a composite sketch of Ryakhovsky. One of the victims had an outstanding memory and she was able to give detailed description of the attacker. Now police officers were patrolling train stations and forests in Moscow region with that sketch. In March of 1993, Ryakhovsky killed again. It was 55-year-old Olga Shuiko. He attacked her while she was walking to her country house from the bus stop. He dragged her into an abandoned barn where he tortured his victim, including putting a firecracker inside of her body and burning her hair. When detectives were searching the murder area, they found another barn, and inside of it there was hanging rope. Detectives assumed that this rope was prepared by the killer for another victim, and they decided to set up an ambush near that barn. Ryakhovsky's next victim was a 13-year-old boy. This happened when Ryakhovsky was leaving another train in Moscow suburb. While he was leaving, he dropped his wallet. 13-year-old boy approached him and gave him back his wallet, which he just lost. After a small talk, Ryakhovsky was able to gain boy's trust and lured him into the forest, where he killed his victim and then assaulted the body. Then he cut his head off, made a bonfire, and burned boy's head and schoolbooks in that fire. Next, Ryakhovsky killed a 62-year-old woman who he attacked near the train station in Balashikha, Moscow region. When she heard someone walking behind her, she used pepper spray on Ryakhovsky, but it didn't stop him for too long. When he attacked her, she took an owl and tried to stab him with it, but he took it away from his victim and killed her with it. On the next day, Ryakhovsky decided to return to the barn where he prepared hanging rope. There, police ambush was already waiting for him. Detectives decided not to arrest Sergei right away, but to approach him and ask for a cigarette. But Ryakhovsky, as soon as he saw them, started running. When officers caught up with him, they couldn't handcuff Sergei. He weighed 130 kilograms, which is 286 pounds, so they took out their guns, and Ryakhovsky surrendered. On the interrogation, Sergei only confessed to one murder, but on the next day, when detectives took him to the crime scene where he killed a 13-year-old boy, he started confessing to everything. He didn't show any guilt during their interrogation. He couldn't hide the enjoyment on his face when he was looking at the photographs from the crime scenes, where he could see victims' bodies. Once, he even asked the detective to give him the photo of one of his victims who had her eyes bulging because she was strangled. He found this photo beautiful and mesmerizing. Ryakhovsky was explaining his murders by saying that he was becoming foggy in his head and wasn't really controlling himself.
Почему убил?
К сожалению, я могу не объяснить не только вам, но и себе.
На тебя что, накатывал сразу, да?
Я знаю, это трудно объяснить.
Ну, ты получал удовольствие, когда убивал, или как?
Это удовольствие не назвать, это облегчение.
А сейчас ты не испытываешь потребность убить кого-нибудь?
Нет.
Despite different sexual and psychiatric deviations, Ryakhovsky was considered sane and fitting for trial. In 1995, he was sentenced to death penalty for 18 murders that were proven. Some sources say that Ryakhovsky committed up to 22 murders. After it, Ryakhovsky was sending different letters asking for pardon, and while this was happening, Russia enabled moratorium on executions in 1996. So Ryakhovsky was sent to maximum security prison in Mordovia region, where he died of tuberculosis in November of 2007. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please tell me what you think in the comments and leave a like. Bye.